Ellen, Lisa, thank you both for joining us today. Let's give them a hand. Let's give them a warm welcome. How did you guys discover human design?
Yeah, so when I started my business, I was taking on the role of the marketer, doing what the entrepreneur is supposed to do. I was going to have coffee, I was meeting with people, and one day somebody came up to me and she said, "You're holding back and we need to go have coffee." Well, it ended up, she was a transformation coach, she was an empath. There was more to me than what I was showing, but I didn't know what it was. I'd come from a highly regulated industry where I was told how to talk, how to speak, what I was allowed to do. And so I went on a journey for identity. Not an accident, we've heard about that this morning, but I went to figure out who was I and what was I here to do. I've always been about purpose. And so through the personality test, there was just things I knew that there was more back there. So I was introduced to someone with human design. And as he read my chart, just the whole conversation, I was giggling the whole way through because I just kept saying, "Wait till you hear what I do." He was spot on, and so now I live my design. So that is really how I found it, is really trying to figure out who I was.
Ellen, how about you? You're interesting because you're an actual doctor. I call myself doctor, like when I'm playing basketball and I score or something, right? But you're a legitimate doctor, which means you're smart and you've gone to school and you know science. I'm being serious. And like human design and a lot of these personality tests and stuff like that, they can seem a little bit out there. How did you come across HD? And yeah, let's just start there. How did you come across this? And what did you think about it when you first came across it?
So I was introduced to human design sort of accidentally. It came into my world. But how many people here have heard of the, like, in a business you have to niche and then you have to keep niching and then you gotta niche until you can't niche anymore? Like that's the business model. I always had a very big resistance to that. And for a very long time, I'm like, oh, it's my limiting beliefs and it's my mindset. And like, maybe I have commitment issues. Like, I don't know, I can't commit to my niche. Like, I don't know what it is, but I couldn't do it. Like it was a lot of resistance and I couldn't figure it out. And I came across, somebody introduced me because I like personality tests, and they introduced me to human design. And when I found out my design very similarly to Lisa, it was just, I think the way you described it was like eerily accurate. Like every aspect of it, I'm like, oh, I see. Oh, okay. And interestingly enough, the human design that I was, I guess, born with, I am naturally multi-passionate. And to make somebody with my human design try to keep niching is very tough. And when you're all in this world, like the entrepreneurial world, you have coaches, you have people who like sort of give you advice on what to do. When you feel like you can't follow it, you feel badly. And then when you do follow it and you feel resistance, you also feel badly. And I really am not interested in growing a business where I don't feel completely aligned with what I am doing. And human design has opened my world into creating that, which I am very happy about.
I think I love the distinction you made there about, I say niche because I'm American. She says niche because she's Canadian or what, I don't know. Riches are in the niches, rhymes better than riches are in the niches. But if anyone didn't know what a niche was, it's a niche. Okay. But in all seriousness, I come from the marketing background. A lot of us are in that space, and a lot of us were coached by marketers, and they tell us things like that. The riches are in the niches. And I think there is a distinction between things that you need to do in a business versus who you are. And for those of us who are in the coaching and the consulting and the creator, speaker industry, where so much of who we are is a part of what we do, we're not manufacturing widgets or Q-tips. Like, you don't need a lot of your personality in your business to make Q-tips. But when we're creating content, we're sharing our personal stories, we're sharing our expertise and our experiences, it feels like the business is us. And yeah, you have to email your list every week. Looking at Matt, right? You have to create your content. You have to do the things that are supposed to happen in the business, but it's easy to lose yourself in who you are with the business, especially when it comes to, and I'd love to dive into this a little bit and then we'll go into the charts, offers. Like how you deliver your expertise and how you share your knowledge can feel very misaligned with who you are if it's the wrong type of delivery. For example, I really strongly dislike doing one-on-one coaching. I strongly have an aversion to it. I like talking to people one-on-one, and I will talk to them for 5 or 10 minutes because I can see the problem very quickly. And I'm like, this is just what you need to do. But having to talk to somebody for 30 minutes or an hour, I don't even talk to my mother that long. Like, it is difficult for me. And then there are others of you who love it. So when I started out in coaching, I did the first or most viable thing, which is what a lot of us do a bunch of one-on-one calls. And like after the first one, I was like, this is death. Like the first call, I'm like, oh my gosh, kill me now. And I was much better with group coaching or group teaching. And then where you guys notice in the masterminds here, I don't teach at all. There's no curriculum in our calls. And I wondered why that was, because I'm much more relational and I wanted people to come to me with their challenge and I can respond in that moment like a guidance counselor, right? Not like a teacher in those moments. Can you guys share a little bit about how human design and knowing your design affected the way you create your offers? So Lisa, you mentioned a little bit about what you were doing in the beginning and how that's shifted. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, especially in what you do, like your offers and your delivery?
Yeah, so in contrast to you, Mike, I love one-on-one coaching because I am looking for deep transformation. I love going deep. I love exploring all the nooks and crannies of what makes us the way we are. But I think understanding my design and how I've been able to create offers is my strongest energy comes in 3 centers. It's the identity center, it's the third eye, which is ajna, so that's like inside, and then the throat. And how I create offers and what I do is I help people understand who they are, which is identity, how to show up, which is the inside, and what to say when they do, which is the throat. And if you look at my chart, my throat has so many gates. Ellen and I kind of geeked out on this last week. She's like, look how many gates are lit up in your throat. Like, I'm a messaging strategist. I help people communicate what they do. That's why we worked with, when I worked with Mike's chart, looking at the messaging. So it really affirms who I am and what offer I create and the reason why people come to me. It also lets me see why I come to other people. So I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but I've got an empty head, all right? My head center is empty. But Mike's, if you look at the top of his chart, is lit up. He is defined. That's where he has energy. That is where the expert shows up. I come to Mike, and why I love working with Mike is he's the expert that gives me the insight that I need to see more clearly.
So in a very practical sense, I don't like one-on-one coaching, which is why I charge college tuition to coach with me for 10 hours. Should probably hire Lisa or partner with her to coach maybe people who are in my community who need one-on-one coaching, and they'd be better off with her and I'd still be happy and we'd be working together on a very practical level, right? So how many of you would think that that's actually pretty helpful to know? You don't need to know all the gates and the centers and all that, but some very practical applications. How about you, Ellen? Like, you see patients. When you look now at your chart and the way that you're wired, does that line up? And is that why you became a doctor, you think, like when you look in retrospect?
Yeah, so, okay, I'm gonna try not to get super technical, but this little triangle on this side here is the spleen center. It has a lot to do with health and well-being and intuition and whatnot. And mine has a lot of, that one's filled in, so it's colored, which means I have a consistent way of drawing energy from there. And because it's related to that and the channels and whatnot around it has a lot to do with being able to take that information and sharing it out with people. So like health and wellness, and then sharing that became like very easy. It was an easier thing for me to do. The other thing sometimes you can look at is like this, some of you print out your chart, I can see. There's the profile on the side there, and there's 2 numbers. It kind of shares a little bit about how you are meant to interact with the world and the role you are here to play. And so my profile is a 3-5, has a lot to do with like making a lot of errors very, very quickly, sharing my experience. And a 5 is a practical solution to problems that many people feel are a bit ethereal and like can't solve. And so if you think about what I came and spoke about last year, which was happiness, and then making it a practical solution to how we approach happiness feels so good to me, and it feels very aligned. And even happiness as a niche is the right niche for me because it is very wide. And yes, like Mike has also given me advice that I do need to like focus within all of the things that kind of make up happiness, but me being able to share that my niche is around creating happiness feels very expansive for me because it doesn't narrow me down into something that makes me feel very suffocated when I talk about it and create offers from it.
How many of you guys saw Ellen's talk from last year's mastermind? It's also on my YouTube channel. I absolutely recommend you watch it. And what you just said about yourself lines up a lot. I remember that talk, and you opened with like lots of stories of how you were trying to find happiness, a lot of trial and error. And I remember sitting in the back with Chelsea and Lauren, and I was like, this is such a good talk. This should be a TED talk. And I remember you could hear a pin drop in the room because it was so engaging, but you were actually sharing your trial and error and then gave us very practical steps on how to embody happiness, which also probably explains why you're a college professor. Like you like to explain things a lot. How many of you do not like to explain anything and you just expect it to be done? Raise your hands. Okay, we got Matt over there, Dana, who runs restaurants. Okay, yes, absolutely. Jason, Sean for sure. Yeah, Sean's even bossy to Chat GPT. You should see the prompts that this guy writes, which we will put in our resource channels. They're awesome. But yeah, he's like that. I just hate doing things and explaining things. I will write a prompt and get it done. I know you're looking at this chart and you're like, what in God's green earth is that thing? And that's exactly the same reaction I had. And I don't think we need to understand it completely, but can you guys explain what the centers are at least? You guys both have mentioned the centers at least. And for me, I don't want to learn all this. I don't want to be an HD expert. I just want to know what applies to me. Maybe that's in my design. I'm like, throw out all the fluff. Just give me what I need to know, right? So here's the laser pointer. It works. You just have to press it harder.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then, it's a little stuck. So either one of you feel free to explain. This is my chart. So now you guys know where I was born and what date and the time. Please do not forge my identity.
I think what Lisa and I might, what we'll do is this. Like, I think there's probably about 5 or 6 concepts around reading a chart, and we'll just really, obviously everybody's chart is completely identical. Completely different. It is most definitely not identical. But you'll see similar things. Like in human design, you're always going to see this reference to a type. Okay? The way to think about a type is how you interact with the world. A generator, since we're using Mike as an example, is the Energizer Bunny of the human design world. They're go, 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 go. They have the capacity to go, 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 go. A strategy is almost like how you interact with the external world. So when the external world sends you signals and gives you things and puts things, like how would you interact with them? The flip side of that is the authority, which is the 4th line on there. Your authority is your inner knowing. It's your guiding light. And so Mike already talked a little bit about his strategy being to respond. He's meant to respond to things that come into his world. His inner authority, is that sacral? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sacral is like a gut knowing. He has a gut knowing. It's very quick. It's instantaneous. It's a yes or a no, and he's usually right with that yes or a no. The not self theme that you see on there is how Mike would know, or how any one of us would know, if you are not living with your human design. So Mike is very likely to feel very frustrated when he's not living in alignment with who he truly is. The flip side of not self, which is not on here, is the self theme, which is when he is living in alignment, and that's when he feels satisfied. So generators are frustrated if they're not self, if it's showing up. If they're living in alignment, they feel satisfied. Is that like kind of how you would say you experience it?
Yeah, because I'm never like blissful.
Right.
I am not, oh my God, the world's amazing and there's unicorns and rainbows. I'm like, good. That's where I peak. But when you, that's somebody who probably knows me really well, right? But I think one of the big things for me, and I know you guys are going to explain this a little bit further, when I learned a generator is the Energizer Bunny, that's why I can work like 15 hours a day and still have gas in the tank. It's not that I need to go make sales and push for a response. I can just create a lot of work. Like I can do and undertake a lot of work. I just thought that I was a workaholic. But once I understood this, I was like, no, I just have a very high capacity to work. There are, I forget which type, is it manifester? Projector. If you're a projector, you do not work. You're lazy. No, I'm just kidding. You have very shorter bursts to work. Yes. But when they told me like your gut is actually how you know, that's the inner authority, that's very counterintuitive to how I've lived my whole life. Because my head is very filled. I'm very too much in my head. I'm too intellectual. I'm too strategic. And I would say yes to projects or clients that my gut was saying, this is not going to be a fit, but I could rationalize it by how much money I was making or the connections that I could see. Does that make sense to anybody? Right? And then I'd get into it and be like, oh, this is not just a bad client. This is a client from hell. Like, why did I sign up to do this? I don't care how much money I'm making or what opportunities are coming. I just don't like this anymore. I'm very frustrated. And this is also probably why then I can drink like 9 drinks that night. And I'm just like this horrible cycle because I'm not following the design, right? So.
Just want to speak to a couple of things. So the other thing about generators is they have so much energy, they have to get it out during the day. And if you do not get out your energy in the day, you're going to have a hard time going to sleep at night. So that's why we work so hard. I'm also a generator. That's why we work so hard. We have to get out all that energy so then we can fall into bed and fall asleep, that we have that. The other thing that I want to talk about with strategy and authority is that is how you interact with the world. These other centers where energy is, that we're going to get into probably just briefly here, is that's what you're putting out to the world. So what I would suggest that you do, if you look at your chart, understand your type, and then what is your strategy? How are you to interact with the world as far as, do you inform and respond? Do you inform and initiate? Are you waiting for an invitation? That tells you where your success is going to come from. And so being able to understand when things come to you or whether you approach something else, that's going to be your key to success versus what the energy that you put out to the world. That is outward, that is to communicate to others.
Okay, so I think a great place to start here is the centers so that all of us can understand what those mean. This is my chart. I don't know what all the colors are, which might not be important right now, but I do see the white one on the lower right. And so when I saw that, it made a lot of sense. But please explain the centers to us.
All right, so if we look at the chart, if the center is colored in, that means where you are consistently producing energy. So when I looked at Mike's chart, there's no question he's got a lot of energy in a lot of places. He's got a lot of talents. He brings a lot to the table. He has a lot to offer people. The one at the top is called the head center. So that's where you get your information. And I'm just going to briefly go through this and we'll go down through the others. The next one is the ajna. That is the third eye. So that is where systems and operations come from. So that's where Elllen is really talented in that as well. The next one, the square one, that is the throat. So that is where communication comes from. If you're a manifester, you have to express yourself. So you usually have a channel that goes up and you're very vocal. You have to they're the catalyst. Next down, the yellow diamond, that is the identity center. That is where love, identity, purpose, knowing who you are and having a good sense of direction in that. Then we're going to go straight down. We're going to go straight down. That's the sacral center. So when we're talking about deciding from your gut, that feeling of that is where just your grounding is in that area. And down at the bottom is the root. That's where a lot of pressure and stress and the fortitude to keep going, maybe when you don't have the energy to do so. Over the left, as Elllen mentioned, that's the spleen. So that's where health and fitness, that's also where fear is. Whether fear comes from internally or externally is dependent on whether or not that center is colored in. And then up over there is the heart center or the ego center. That's where we have willpower, and that's where your sense of worth comes. So if you are a person who feels like they can't charge enough for their services, there's usually, that center is usually not defined, and so we look at the gates within that and see how to work with that. And then the lower right is the solar plexus. And you see the solar plexus is not colored in for Mike. That is where a lot of emotion lives. And if you've been around Mike for any period of time, you know that, so what this means when the center is empty is he is absorbing that from other people. So when he walks in a room or he gets around a group of people, he doesn't have the energy he's exuding emotionally, but he is taking in all of our energy, amplifying it and reflecting it back. That's why it's not uncommon to see him napping in the lobby during an event. Because he can't process that, and you see why. I think that was a big aha moment for you.
I want to say something to this because when I've done a lot of human design charts with clients, the first thing, and I think it's like an innate thing that humans do, is when you hear some of these words, you're like, oh, Mike has all of these defined centers. He's got so much energy. He's really strong. Like he's strength in those things, and his one weak spot is like his emotional center. I'm actually not saying that about you. But reality is that in human design, and one of the things that I love about human design is that there's no such thing as like your strength is this, your weakness is that, you're good at this, you're bad at that. Like it doesn't have that kind of language. All it means is that Mike has the ability to sort of produce his own energy within him for certain things. And for emotion, like even in his center that's undefined, it doesn't mean he doesn't feel emotions. It just means he amplifies what's around him. It actually makes him a really good coach because you can feel the people's emotions, right? Like, so there's no, I know some of you have printed our chart, there's no good or bad just because he's a generator and he can go, go, go. If you're a projector, you're not lazy. You're just able to do more in the 3 to 4 hours. Is there anybody in here who knows that there's a projector? They are a projector? Yeah, you are meant to work in cycles of 3 to 4 hours. So just give the 3 to 4 hours. You're doing great. Whatever you do in those 3 to 4 hours is probably better than what you would try to do if you push yourself to work 8 hours. And so learning that about your human design means you don't get swept up into societal, like you gotta work 8 hours and you gotta do it this way. And building a business means you gotta work this many hours, like to Robert's point from this morning, right? Like, you don't have to work those 80 hours to be successful. As a projector, you work 3 to 4 hours, you are good. Go take a break, reconnect with nature. It's like the best way for you to move forward. So learning these things about yourself, that makes it easier for you to build a business that matches how you are meant to really function.
And back to Lisa, what you were saying, when I saw that about myself, like the emotional part was really open, I was like, no wonder I don't like one-on-one coaching. Like I take too much of the energy from the client, and usually if they're coaching with me, it's because they're in distress. I've never had a coaching client sign with me because they were happy. So now I'm just taking on all their stuff, right? I'm like, oh, this is really overwhelming. And if I keep saying yes to things that my gut's saying no to, it's usually bad energy for me, and I can't take it. And it's also like, I love you guys, but it's why I have an application process for the mastermind, because I don't want any crazy people around me that are going to drain me, right? Tony Grebmeyer from Denver that we met last year, he says they're drainers and they're drivers, right? And so me knowing that, I also schedule these events this way so that I say it's so that you guys can have open collaboration hours, but honestly, I'm going to go take a nap after we're done and I'll meet you for dinner. But it's okay, right? And if I need to keep the event going, I could just have them host, or Robbie or whoever, Chelsea, could run an event for the sake of the event. And I am now very okay with how I do things in my particular business. And that is a wonderful feeling. Is this helping you guys at all? Like, how many want to know like what your chart is now? Like, you're all super curious. Like, you can see the practical applications of it. Can you guys talk through a little bit about what the types are, like the 4 or 5 types? And I think that'll help us kind of understand, Lisa, or anything else you want to add.
So generator is about 30% of the population. And again, they love doing work that they are called here to do. They are here to do the work. They are here to generate the information in the world and to create the programs and all of those things that go with it. They are also, because we have the sacral defined, that sacral center defined, all of us that are generators, they really use their gut. Now there's 2 different ways you could be. You could either be an emotional authority, which means you have a wave of emotion that you have to ride through and let settle anywhere from 24 to 48 hours. I'm an emotional generator, so I know when I get excited about something. Now, it's not, are we going to have lasagna for dinner? I don't have to wait 24 hours for that. But if I want to sign up for a program, or if I want to do, like a pretty big decision, I have to ride that emotional wave before I make a decision. And at that point, it's really only 70, 80%, and I feel it in my gut. Mike, in contrast, doesn't have that emotional wave because his solar plexus is not defined. And so he is able to immediately go to his gut, or no. The other thing about generators is the way to get them to respond is ask them questions that can be answered in yes or no, because we're going to feel it in our gut. So Mike, do you want filet mignon for dinner? It's either
No.
Okay, there you go. Immediately he knew. But if I ask him if he wanted lasagna or pulled pork, then he has to decide. And so that's going into your head. So that's the thing about generators. We love knowing who we are. And so that's why you'll see a lot of generators who are really into those personality tests and understanding that. So you want to do Manny, Jetty?
Yeah, okay. So manifesting generators are another type. And so manifesting generators tend to be very, very multi-passionate. They are extremely fast-paced. They will jump from one thing to another. They'll like dive into something, figure it out, and then jump to the next thing because they're done and bored with that thing, and they're going to move on to the next thing. Manifesting generators are also they're very much like generators. Okay, so they're very much like generators. With the manifesting part, that part is because they're like another type, the third type, which is a manifester. And so if you want to imagine a manifesting generator as someone who is the go, go, go energizer bunny, but also likes to like, how would I describe this? Like, go, 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 but in multiple directions. Go, go, go in multiple directions. And I think you actually had this conversation with me. You're like, you're trying to row the boat in too many directions and you need to pick one so I can actually help you market, which is totally true. And it's very, like, it's me. Like, I will find one thing to do and then be done with it and kind of be like, okay, I'm ready. I'm going to go do the next thing. And it can make, I think it can, in part, if you're a manifesting generator, you might feel like you feel very scatterbrained and like you have an inability to focus. And I think there's a lot of almost like misdiagnosis of ADHD around that, because the world wants people to like focus and the world wants people to like stick to one lane and like do your own thing and stop bouncing around. And like there's a lot of judgment around that, like, oh, you're so like floofy, like you're just like going, bouncing around and you're not committing to anything. And I don't think that's actually true. And when I learned that about myself, it was really affirming and it made me feel like there wasn't anything wrong with me. It's literally just how I maneuver the world. So if you are a manifesting generator and you're multi-passionate, just know that that's literally your superpower. The fact that you will have so many experiences because you've bounced around doing a whole bunch of different things and learned from all of it.
Okay, I'm going to go, since we talked about manifester. Manifestors make up 8% of the population, so not a whole lot of those. Those people are here to ignite and catalyze activity. So how their strategy is they are to inform and then initiate, which means if you are thinking about what you're going to do, you need to have a small circle of people to tell what you're going to do, and then you go out and do it. They can have more energy than a generator or manifesting generator, however, they cannot sustain it as long. When manifestors are in their not self, they get angry. And when they are in their self, then they find peace. My 2-year-old grandson is a manifestor. And you just have to give him a long leash as long as he's not going to hurt himself, because they want to be in control. The other thing is, if you parent a manifestor or if you are a manifestor, they tend to learn very quickly that if I tell people what I'm going to do and they don't want me to do it, then they're going to try and control me. So a lot of times they will shut that down. So manifestors are here to make things happen. But again, they have to be very careful. They do need to inform, but if they get a tight circle of people, they can tell what they're going to do, then that will let them move on.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to double back to the manifesting generator. So there's like similar qualities. A manifesting generator has to respond, so equally waiting for the, like, experiencing the world and then responding to it. But because there's that manifestor quality, you also have to then inform the people around you. The reason why manifestors have to inform is that they work so quickly. They just like have an idea and they're off, and they forget that the people around them will be affected by said idea. And many of you are in either teams or relationships, and you know when you make a decision and you go and you don't inform your team, it's gonna create friction and people feel disrespected and they feel not included. And so you wanna make sure then you inform the people around you so that they understand why you're going as fast as you're going in the direction that you're going in. So then I'm looking at Jeanette. Jeanette is a manifestor. I've done her chart, and yeah, manifestors are here to start revolutions, and Jeanette is on her way to change how women are treated after childbirth. And so, yeah, they're very good at kickstarting revolutions, and then they just have to remember to let people know what they're doing, as Jeanette is learning. She tells me. What do we cover? Oh, projectors. So projectors are the seers. Like, they have this very innate ability to ask very good questions very, very quickly and see the truth behind what is happening. So projectors tend to be really good at one-on-one settings. Projectors tend to be very good teachers. They tend to be very good coaches, because they're very good at seeing quickly what the issue is and then coming up with practical, effective solutions to solving that problem. Projectors are, their self and not self is feeling successful or bitter. So projectors, when they're living in their design, they feel successful, whatever that feeling is within them. When they're not living in their design, they feel very bitter, like very resentful. Like when they feel like people around them do not appreciate their gifts, they will feel extremely resentful. And so it's really important for projectors to then surround themselves with people who understand their gift and are able to support that process.
Yeah, so reflector is 1% of the population. These people have no centers defined, which means they are not putting out any energy. They are absorbing energy from everything, which means when they make a decision, they have to go with a 28-day lunar cycle, because they have to take in all the information, and it takes them that long for that major decision to find clarity. This is really important for them to choose their environments well. If they're in nature, or the people they surround themselves with, those reflectors, this is where empaths live, because they're absorbing other people's energy. You don't run into many of them, but when you do, I mean, you know, just like all of us, how they are, their energetic blueprint, they have to understand where that comes from. So as I finish that, could I just make another comment about?
Sure.
Yeah, so, you know, when we look at why is human design so important and why is it important now, is if you haven't noticed, the whole world, everywhere we look, all of the systems and structures that have been put into place to keep us safe and organized are starting to deconstruct. We have formulas we've been given to follow, we have rules we've been given to play, and those are no longer working. So by knowing who you are and how you interact with the world, you have your own virtual playbook that you can follow to know how to navigate this new era of uncertainty that we're walking into, where you don't know when people show up, is it AI or is it really them? This way you can express who you are and have that vibration, that magnetic draw to bring people in that will resonate with them.
Yeah, that reminds me of something when human design. The person who taught me, one of the opening things that she shared was that human design will show you who you were before society told you who to be. And I thought that was very powerful for me to hear, and I wanted to share that.
This has been really helpful. I encourage all you guys to at least get your chart. Without going too much further down the rabbit hole, I think this kind of work is going to become very mainstream in the next 10 years in corporate America, in the way that during our last 10 years, DISC, MBTI, that all got into the corporate world. You guys remember that, right? Like, people thought that was like hokey stuff. And now it's so mainstream. And there are companies who are taking this and they've put a different cover on it, but it's essentially human design to help you understand where your energy comes from and how you flow. And one of the things that I would say, in contrast to a lot of the other assessments that are out there, for example, I'm pretty sure I know what some of you are without you even reading your chart, because I've just known you well enough. I'm pretty sure I know what James is. But on the Enneagram, we're the same. But here, we're totally different. And that makes total sense to me, because I'm not launching anything in Africa. I'm not going to change the world because I want to start a revolution and burn down, things. I just want to be calm and help the people who come to me. But it's very easy for me to compare myself to him, because we're the same on another thing, and be like, oh, I'm not living my purpose. I need to go to 18 more Tony Robbins events and drink a lot of coffee and like get mad about something. That's just not who I am, right? So I hope you guys can see that. And if you want Lisa and Ellen to walk through this exercise with you, I would highly recommend you consider it, at least consider it. I recommend it because it's been very, very helpful to me. And it's worth every penny. So we'll give you guys a link to get your chart, and they're not going to keep your birthday and birth time information like they did with mine. Okay, it's all secure, and display it for the world to see. But at least know what you are, and hopefully you were able to see some of the practicals on how it can be applied, especially to the kind of businesses that most of us are in, because they are extensions of who we are. Ladies, thank you so much. Let's give them a warm round of applause.